Welcome into this Monday special edition of On Texas Football. Got a couple of things for you guys today. I'm Jerry Hamilton. That is CJ Vogel on the screen with myself. Steve Sarkisian just met with the media ahead of the Oklahoma game, the Red River Rivalry showdown, whatever you want to call it, number 1 versus number 18 at 2:30 p.m. Saturday. Before we get to CJ on that, CJ was just announced also Texas, Georgia will be a night game on the 19th. So a couple of big news items hitting out. Again, Texas, Georgia, October 19th will be a night game for those of you who are planning to go. So we'll have more on that on ontexasfootball.com. All right, CJ, let's start with your takeaways from what Steve Sarkisian had to say. We both listened to the press conference. Your general takeaways.
Well, first and foremost, I think we need to start with Quinn Ewers, right? It does sound like he will be fully healthy for this game. That wasn't too much of a surprise. What was a surprise is Sarkisian today saying if the game was played this afternoon, Quinn would be trotted out there and be the starting quarterback for the Texas Longhorns. It sounds like that bye week certainly helped get him back into shape. Of course, coming off of that abdominal strain, whatever you wanted to call it, the bye week helped not only him, but a number of Longhorns as well. Sarkisian also said it was a big week for guys like Trey Weiser, Jarrett Gibson, Jaden Blue to get fully healthy in that running back room. And to go into Oklahoma with your starting quarterback returning and your offensive line coming back with all the experience that it's had in this game, very important for the Longhorns as we look ahead to the Red River Shootout this weekend.
Yeah, and I think we have some clips maybe from Steve Sarkisian here if I'm not getting myself ahead of myself on Quinn Ewers. So whenever we're ready for that.
I think a couple things. One, Quinn worked last week for our 3 practices. He practiced again today. I thought he looked good coming off the bye. I think if anybody benefited from the time off, it was probably him. We're going to monitor him daily just to kind of see how he continues to progress. But I feel good about if how he was today. I feel good about him going Saturday, but that remains to be seen. And I have no hesitation with Arch going in the game. I think he's proven that to us over 2.5 games of football that he's really played in and competed in, that he can run our offense and he can be successful. And so, like I said, like I talked about the offensive line, we're fortunate to be in the position that we're in, to have 2 quality players at the quarterback position that we have confidence in and that their teammates have confidence in.
Would Quinn start right now if you had to pick something?
If we had to play today, sure. But again, that's why it's important that we monitor him kind of daily, because I want to see how he responds to extended work and what that looks like to make sure that he's as healthy as he can be to perform.
All right, there you go. That's what Steve Sarkisian had to say. I don't think a lot of surprise there. And somebody, I guess, followed up and Sark just said, "Look, guys, I'm just being honest. I sleep better at night when I'm honest." And he was just being honest about where the situation was. He wants to continue to monitor Quinn, but Quinn is ready to go. If the game was played today, Quinn would be the starting quarterback, and I think Arch will prepare this week almost like he's the starting quarterback to be ready in this game, CJ. But I think this is big news, obviously. And look, I don't think there's any secret here. I don't think for those wondering, Brent Venables was sitting there last week game planning for both quarterbacks. They knew Quinn was going to be the starting quarterback this week.
Yeah, I don't think it was any surprise. But on the same side, you'd love to have the third-year starting quarterback in this game, in this environment, to have seen this setting before, to know what it's like to have a home game on one side and a away game on the other. That's not the case for Oklahoma, right, who will be starting true freshman Michael Hawkins. It's going to take some time, right? You normally expect there to be some sort of learning curve in this game with the swing of emotions, with the way that this game kind of goes about. To get Quinn back for this, of course, something that I think Texas will be very fortunate to have. But, Jerry, I wanted to pivot a little bit to that offensive line, and that was asked to Sarkisian as well, because we saw last year you lose Jake Majors very early in that game, and Connor Robertson, I thought, stepped in and played pretty well in that football game for the Longhorns a year ago. We've talked about the issues Oklahoma has had on their offensive line in this game. Texas, as the veteran group in this game, as the group that's been through it before with the continuity, with the experience, this is where you need to separate and limit those pre-snap, penalties for this game specifically. Let that be, kind of error more so to Oklahoma, the inexperienced group, the group that's not yet gone through this game before. That's one of my big keys for this game as well.
I think offensive line is my number one key in this game, other than the obvious turnovers, right? That's always one in the rivalry game, especially on your end of the field. But it is an offensive line game. Circled this year for me were Michigan, Oklahoma, Georgia, and A&M. And I'm not saying Kentucky's not good defensively. Those are the four best defensive fronts Texas is going to face this year. Probably the four best front sevens in total, too. The Texas offensive line has to play at a high level in those games. They already did against Michigan. That doesn't mean you're going to come out breathing fire against ULM and UTSA back-to-back. It doesn't work that way, but they played at a very high level against Michigan. If they turn in a very similar performance this week, I think that's a great thing for the Texas Longhorns. But it all starts with the communication up front. Now, this isn't the hostile on-the-road environment like a Michigan, like a Alabama, like an A&M will be later this year, Arkansas even. But it's a 50-50 stadium, and there's a lot of emotion in this game. Players get overly emotional. You know, part of Jake Major's job on Saturday, you have the pre-snap, you set the whole thing. You have to make sure the communication sound from center guard to tackle. But then, CJ, another big part of this is the post-play emotion. DJ Campbell's a very emotional player, and that's in a good way. He's protecting his players. Jake Majors has to control all of this, right? This offensive line cannot have dumb penalties, the pre-snaps, things such as that, the holding penalties on really bad down and distance situations for Texas. This is an offensive line game. If the offensive line handles Oklahoma's front, then Texas will have guys open in this game because they have too much speed, to your point. But, CJ, anything else on – there were a lot of questions for other injuries. Did Sark mention any other players? Was anything else asked of other injuries?
Nothing too concrete from Sarkisian. Of course, we'll see the injury report or the availability report coming out Wednesday evening. There was no update on Derek Williams. He did say it was a good weekend for the running backs as they continue to work back to get into health. I look back to what Sarkisian said a week ago, and he said, you know, to be completely honest, outside of some of the pre-season injuries, we've been a pretty fortunate team when it comes to keeping all of our guys healthy. And a lot of that is Texas has a lot of depth, Gary, and because of that, they're able to not have to play their star players 60, 70, 80 snaps a game, where we've seen some of these guys on other teams go down because of over snaps, over extensions right now. He actually brought that up about a question about the linebackers. You know, he said Jalen Ford a year ago played every single snap in this football game. So far, because of our depth, and we got 5 guys at linebacker that we could trot out with Benda, Anthony Hill, Mo Blackwell, Leon Glafau, Ty Anthony Smith. We can have these guys take a series off in the second quarter, make sure that they're fresh for those key clutch situations later on in the fourth quarter. And in a game like this, where you're expected that, you know, kind of close-knit ball game and a rivalry game to go all the way to the wire, that's all the more important.
Yeah, and by the way, for everybody, thanks for joining us. I'm Jerry Hamilton in for Bobby Burton. Bobby's flying up to Bristol to get him to change the FPI percentage of Texas up 85%, an 85% pick in this. He was not liking that this morning. No, he had a meeting, so I'm stepping in for CJ Vogel. I'm on my way up to watch a couple of practices we'll talk about tonight on the Longhorn live stream. But we started with Quinn Ewers. Now I want to pivot back to Steve Sarkisian's opening statement today on the rivalry, the Texas-Oklahoma game, how much he loves that and just his team in general.
He came back refreshed today. We had some guys that were nicked up that needed to get healthy, but I think everybody, coaches included, needed a little bit of a reset, needed a little bit of a refresh. It was great to get recruiting on Friday, but more importantly, I think everybody kind of getting off their feet, enjoying college football this weekend, which was a heck of a weekend to be a fan, and then coming back today ready to work. Naturally, this is anytime you have a rivalry game like this, Red River Rivalry, in my opinion, as you guys know how I feel about this game, it's one that's very special and one that, we're humbled and honored to be part of the history of this game. And to think this is the 120th time Texas and OU have played is pretty fascinating. And to be part of it, like I said, is special. Our preparation is really critical this week as we get ready to play a very talented football team. Coach Venable's done a really nice job. They play excellent defense. They do a really good job of getting to the quarterback. They do a great job of creating turnovers. They found a niche now offensively with Hawkins at quarterback to create those explosive plays, and so pose a lot of issues that we have to prepare for. And but like I said, it should be a great day for college football, and one that, like I said, we're fortunate to be part of this game.
We lost Jerry, but he's coming back here in a second. A little connection issues out here on the recruiting trail here, but you heard a little bit about Sarkisian talking about the Oklahoma offense, and they found a little bit of a niche there with Michael Hawkins as the quarterback, of course, taking over for Jackson Arnold, and some of the injuries that Oklahoma's already had to sustain at the wide receiver position this year. Their makeup coming into the year is completely different than what we're seeing right now in Week 7. I actually asked Sarkisian about the Oklahoma wide receiver, saying, hey, they've lost a couple pieces right now. Some NFL caliber guys at wide receiver. They have a young quarterback. What's kind of one of those things that you look at when you game plan against an Oklahoma that provides some challenges for the Texas defense? And he said, first and foremost, Oklahoma's done a tremendous job of recruiting for the explosive play. And when you look at it with guys like Jaquez Petaway, Brennan Thompson, there's a lot of speed that Oklahoma is able to trot out. Not so much the downfield ability of a Nick Anderson, of a Jalil Farouk, of a guy like Jaden Gibson, who I believe had 26 yards per catch a year ago. There's still some guys that you have to be wary of if you're the Texas defense, and it starts with Petaway and it starts with Brennan Thompson, two guys that they're starting to lean on a little bit more. I do think that there is some question marks about Nick Anderson and his availability. There was obviously the injury report will come on Wednesday, but there were some rumors that he could be a guy coming out of this bye week that could see a return to the field for the Oklahoma Sooners. I lean a little bit more on the pessimistic side. Of course, we won't hear anything too specific until those injury reports, and even then, I suspect them to be quite vague when those injury reports come out. But right now, you got to, as Texas and Oklahoma go into this game, it's the speed of both teams that are going to provide some issues for for both defenses. And hey, we got Jerry back.
Yeah, man. Sorry, I'm at a Chick-fil-A up in Willis, Texas, on my way up I-45, and the computer overheated, as you'd expect in Texas in October 7th, right? What the world's going on here? But look, I think CJ, I love how Sark embraces the Texas-Oklahoma rivalry. I really do. I think he's got truly a great college football perspective, because he been at USC. He's been at Alabama. He's been at multiple Blue Bloods, and he's seen all these rivalry games. He's coached in the Iron Bowl. He's got perspective on some of the greatest games this sport has. And when he talks about Texas, Oklahoma, I think that is absolutely coming from a place of a coach, CJ, that's been on the field of some of the best rivalry games in college football history.
Yeah, a game not mentioned there is the Holy War, right? He was a player in those games back in the day as well. So you get to see it from all different perspectives. USC, Notre Dame, Washington, the Apple Cup, the Iron Bowl, and now this one. What's going to be really interesting is what his takes are on the Texas A&M game at the end of the year when that game comes back. But you get a genuine sense of appreciation about the Cotton Bowl and about everything that goes into this game when Sarkisian speaks about it. And as a Texas fan, as someone that appreciates good football, that's something I don't think that should be glossed over. That's someone that understands the moment, understands the situation and the environment that he is walking into. And when you understand it, when you lived it, when you've played it, when you've coached it, I think there's an extra sense of gratitude for everything that goes into it. And right now, listen, man, it's exciting whenever Sarkisian talks about this game, because it's always the same thing, right? I like the bus ride in. You get the horns on one side, you get the horns down on another. You step outside, you smell the fare, the corn dogs, the hot dogs, the peanuts, the popcorn, and then you walk inside and it's a home game for one side, it's a away game for the other, and there's nothing like it. And we'll get to see it all again on Saturday when Texas walks in as the number one team in the country. No doubt about it. Hey, CJ, anything else that struck you? I listened to press conference, you did as well. Anything else that kind of struck you from that? Or I think we covered, for those just joining us, Quinn, Sark said if the game was today's, Quinn will be the starter. That's what we all expected to hear. He's still going to monitor him throughout the week, as you'd expect him to say.
as well, coming off the injury he did in the timetable. It does take to make sure that abdominal strain is close to 100% as it can get. And I do think it's very close to 100%, by the way. But anything else Sark said that caught your attention, CJ, before we get out of here?
Yeah, I'll answer Kabir's question here. Did he talk about the fumbles? Not directly, but he did say that there was a lot of emphasis coming out of last year's game about two things: red zone efficiency and 2 turnovers. Coming out of the Mississippi State game, what was one of the big, conversations? Well, it was a pair of fumbles, and it was also Texas not necessarily coming out to play right away in that first half, which allowed for the Bulldogs to stick around. That's been a point of emphasis, not just this past weekend, but even beforehand. We saw how successful Texas was the first 4 games of the year when they were, 21 of 23 in the red zone?
Yeah.
Sorry, I got a helicopter above me right now. But that's been a point of emphasis now for about 2 straight weeks. And he said it's been a topic of conversation. This was a really strong practice to start off the week, not just for Jaden Blue, but for that entire running backs room. He said Jaden Blue's had a great week. He was actually a little non-committal, Jerry, when it came to who was going to be the starting running back. He did say, of course, Texas is going to need all 3 of those scholarship guys right now, including Jarrett Gibson coming into this game. There's different skill sets for each one, and right now the speed of Blue is going to be something that's going to be very difficult to keep him off the field, even with some of these, lingering ball security issues.
There's a question here. Kyle Pfaff, I won't pronounce that right, Pfaff, has a question. How will it be different with a 2:30 start time? Maybe a little more breezy at 2:30 at times. That's the one thing, right? Wind picks up more around lunchtime, early afternoon. If there's wind that day, could be a little more breezy. So the kicking game, the punting and kicking game could be more of a factor. We'll have to see. It just depends on the weather report. But that would be one thing I'm looking at. As far as 2:30 games, I mean, these teams are accustomed to this. They both had games in that window this season. I do think I don't think it changes anything travel-wise, nothing like that for the teams. They're both in Dallas, but into early Friday. They have all their meetings at the hotels throughout the Friday, coaches' meetings, players' meetings. Nothing for me changes, CJ, at the 2:30 start, other than maybe the weather a little bit.
Yeah, that could be one of the biggest issues. I've yet to look ahead, put my forecasting hat on yet, and see what the weather will look like on Saturday. But to your point, normally in those 11 a.m. games, you get out there, it's all fresh in the morning. You still got the mildew on the field if if the weather permits that. But for Texas to have already played a 2:30 game, I think that bodes well here as well. Jerry, real quick, because I thought Sarkisian mentioned something pretty interesting about Michael Hawkins again. Said, as a freshman quarterback, you come into this game without any skins on the wall, which also means you don't have any battle scars, both good and in a negative way, right? You have yet to really be rattled, but you've yet to really be rattled. So coming into this game for a young quarterback, how, difficult will it be for a young quarterback in this game where in a situation I'm sure he's never, faced before with it being 50-50 split down the middle?
I think the biggest thing for Oklahoma is to not get down a couple of scores early in this game. Because if that happens, then that puts more pressure on Michael Hawkins. A fast start by Texas Saturday is useful for a number of reasons. But number one, along with just grabbing the early momentum and the opposite of the start last year for Texas, would be what does Oklahoma and Michael Hawkins do offensively if they get down 2 scores in the game early? If Texas could get up 10 to 14 points in the first quarter, I think that is going to somewhat change the way Oklahoma wanted to attack the game. And then those throws have a little bit more pressure. Everything moves a little quicker for you when you're down. I know it's a long football game, but the reality is in a rivalry game, if you can get up a couple of scores, unless you're bringing Superman off the bench and Lincoln Riley's not there to do that this year, then I think it's very beneficial for Texas, and it makes it tougher on a young quarterback playing his first game in the Red River rivalry.
Yeah, one last thing I wanted to bring up here. The question from King Kunta about Sark saving something for Oklahoma. The answer is absolutely yes. It's a rivalry game. You have a week to prepare. He actually mentioned he expects that to be the case from Oklahoma and Brent Venables as well, to match his defense with the Texas offense. said, what we've seen on tape over the last 3-4 weeks probably won't be what we see coming into this game.
Yeah.
I expect Venables to have something for Sark, and I expect Sark to have something for Venables.
doubt.
And all of this encapsulated by getting that third-year starting quarterback back on the field for Texas to truly open up that playbook, motion-wise, pre-snap, whatever it is, it'll be completely open on Saturday against Oklahoma.
We're going to end with this one. Emmanuel Villafranco, and we have Longhorn live stream tonight. We have the winning drive with CJ, Rod, and Coach Shipley coming up this afternoon. Tonight we have Talking Ball, Bobby Burton and myself. So 2 more live streams. Bring all your questions. But Emmanuel Villafranco, blitz percentage going up. For those of you that didn't have a chance to listen to Brian Robeson on Coffee and Football, try to go back to about 8:35 this morning and listen to that interview. We talked about that, CJ, and what I thought was interesting, and I agree with what his thinking. If the front 4 controls Oklahoma's offensive line early, then you may not have to bring the numbers as much as you thought you did. And this falls, and I think it's a huge offensive line game for both. How much has Oklahoma offensive line improved with a week off? I don't know. But they better have improved a lot to give Michael Hawkins a chance. But if the Texas front is having their way getting pressure in this game, then that is bad news for Michael Hawkins because Texas doesn't have to bring the extra numbers. And they can sit back and sit in confusing looks for Hawkins. And Brian Robeson, I thought, was 100% on point, was if the front does that early, then your hand's not really forced to bring the numbers. That's going to be interesting to see how the OU offensive line plays early in this game.
On top of that, it allows you to keep a spy for the quarterback run game, which was obviously a big part for Jackson Arnold's game. But now with Michael Hawkins, I think there's even a level above what we were seeing earlier in this Oklahoma offense. Sark also mentioned how important and the emphasis that Texas will have this weekend in gap responsibilities, making sure that they are not doubling up on gaps to open up a running lane for Hawkins in the pass game. So they're taking into every part of the account in terms of the running game for the quarterback, the running game for the running backs, and then obviously the deep pass game to those speedy wide receivers.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this Longhorn live stream here. Steve Sarkisian's Monday press conference, week of Texas OU, rivalry, shootout, whatever you want to call it. We call it everything. Showdown, you name it. But for CJ Vogel, I'm Jerry Hamilton. I got to get back on the road to get to 3 p.m., 3:30 high school football practice. CJ has winning drive with Rod Babers and Bob Shipley. Bobby Burton and myself will be back at 7 p.m. tonight. We'll be talking recruiting, Texas OU. Bring all your questions. Thanks for joining in today, this afternoon. You guys have a great early afternoon, and we'll talk to you in a couple hours.